People sometimes ask me what my favorite part about using the resource parent curriculum is. And I think from a child welfare perspective, as a social worker working in the field of foster care, my favorite part was how much time it saved me in the long run. When I first used the curriculum, I used it in addition to everything else I was doing. I brought together a group of parents, had an evening training on top of my normal caseload, and just gave it a try. And there are so many things in hindsight that I look back and think that we could have done better or that we really didn't do well. But ultimately, the outcome was that families were really starting to look at kids' behaviors differently, seeing those behaviors as symptoms of trauma, and as a result, beginning to think about new ways or new approaches, new techniques to try to respond to those behaviors in order to either make them better or make them go away completely or increase them depending on. And so one of the things that happened over the course of doing 2 or 3 different sessions of the Resource Parent Curriculum Workshop is that suddenly the number of crises that I was responding to in my day-to-day social work practice dropped dramatically. And I remember one particular day when I walked in the door and I had been out of the office for 3 or 4 days. And I went to sit at my desk and realized that my answering machine phone light wasn't blinking. And I remember picking up the phone and checking to see if the phone line was dead or if my voicemail was off or if something was just not right, because that had never happened before. I had never been out of the office for an extended period of days and not come back to just a huge number of voicemails. Many of them were urgent. And so what happened was that I checked my phone, I checked my voicemail, and there weren't any missed calls. No one had needed me. No one had reached out to me. And in hindsight, what I realized is that because families were looking at behaviors as symptoms of trauma, it was giving them a new way to think about behaviors. They were brainstorming new ways to respond, and they weren't calling me in crisis. They weren't calling me to tell them what to do. And of course, I didn't know even if they did, but they were figuring things out, and they were figuring things out in brilliant and effective ways. And so by the time I left my position, I think I had something like 3/4 the size of a full-time caseload, even though I only worked half-time, because I had the capacity for that many more foster homes to work with, because the training had reduced the amount of hours I spent on a weekly basis responding to crises calls or doing one-to-one training or consultation. Families just needed me less. And as a social worker, I always think of the pinnacle of our career being not necessary anymore. And this curriculum really helped me get to that. It helped empower families so that they were experts on their children. They were able to come up with ideas and ways to support and respond to their kids, as well as support and respond to one another. And I was less critical to the process, which felt incredibly successful, not only in terms of using the curriculum, but in terms of my role as a social worker in the field of foster care.
This marks the end of this podcast. For more information about the Resource Parent Curriculum, please visit us online at learn.nctsn.org/RPC. Thank you for listening.